Hello and welcome. Some stories just stick with you, and today we're diving into one that feels more relevant than ever, even though it's 2 centuries old. We're talking about Jane Austen's final novel, Persuasion. It's this beautiful, thoughtful look at what happens when we let other people's opinions steer us away from our own true north. And really, that brings us to the big question at the heart of this book. Just think about it for a second. Have you ever been talked out of something your gut was telling you to do, and then spent years just wondering, what if? If you've ever felt that sting of regret or just wished for a do-over, then trust me, this story is going to resonate with you.
So, let's get into it. Persuasion was actually published in 1817, right after Austen passed away. And sure, on the surface, it's a Regency romance. But it is so much more than that. This is a novel for a more mature reader, someone who really appreciates psychological depth. It's this quiet, powerful story about the constant tug of war between who we really are and who society expects us to be.
And here's the thing that was pretty radical for its time, and honestly, still is. Austen is basically saying that true wisdom doesn't come from listening to all that sensible advice from everyone around you. Nope. It comes from finally learning to trust your own inner compass. The book's big idea is that the greatest mistake isn't failing, it's letting someone else's voice be louder than your own. Okay, so this leads us right to the main conflict of the story, which is all wrapped up in our main character, Anne Elliot. Here's the setup. 8 years before the book even starts, she was convinced to break off her engagement to Frederick Wentworth, the man she loved, all because he didn't have the right status or money. And now, she's living with the quiet, lingering fallout of that single decision. This quote from the very first chapter just hits you. It sets the stage perfectly. We see a woman who is smart, capable, and deeply feeling, but to her own family, she's invisible. Her opinion doesn't matter, her needs are always last. She has been systematically silenced by the people who should value her most. And this just shows the devastating cost of being persuaded away from your heart. When Anne and Captain Wentworth finally meet again after 8 long years, it's not just awkward, it's actively painful. They're worse than strangers. Austen just brilliantly shows how listening to outside noise can completely sever our most real, most authentic connections, turning something that was once so natural into pure agony. But here's the beautiful part. This story isn't just about the regret, it's about the journey back. It's about Anne finding her voice again. So let's walk through some of the key moments where she goes from this quiet, overlooked woman to someone who reclaims her own authentic self.
I absolutely love this line. It's so profound, right? She was pushed into making a prudent choice when she was young, a choice that went against everything she felt. But as she ages, she realizes that real wisdom isn't about being sensible. It comes from her own experiences, her own heart. It's like she has to unlearn the very prudence that led her astray.
And you can just feel her getting stronger. In this scene, she's in a debate about whether men or women are more faithful. And Anne, she doesn't just defend herself, she takes what society might call a weakness, a woman's unwavering heart, and she reframes it as this incredible, profound strength. It's this amazing moment where she finds her power by just being true to who she is. And it all leads to this. Gosh, one of the most iconic love letters in all of literature. Captain Wentworth overhears Anne defending a woman's capacity to love, and it's like a dam breaks. All those years of pride and hurt just wash away. This is the absolute peak of the story, where raw, honest emotion finally wins out over all the rules, regrets, and things left unsaid. So you might be thinking, okay, that's a great story, but what does a 200-year-old book really have to do with my life today? Well, a surprising amount, actually. The core message here is timeless, and we can actually turn it into a practical tool for navigating our own lives, especially since we're just bombarded with opinions 24/7. If you take one thing away from Persuasion, let it be this. The most painful regret isn't messing up or making a mistake. The real tragedy is looking back and realizing you lived a life that was designed by somebody else, a life shaped by their fears and their judgments, not your own hopes. Authenticity is everything. So, inspired by Anne's journey, here's something you can actually try. Let's call it the 24-hour pause protocol. Next time you have a big decision, first, just pause. Step 1, write down what you genuinely want before you ask anyone else for their opinion. Get it on paper. Step 2, compare. Then go ahead and listen to others' advice, but compare it to what you already wrote down. How does it line up? And finally, step 3, express.
Practice clearly stating your own perspective. It's a way to anchor yourself in your own truth before all the outside noise starts to creep in. So, what's the final verdict on Persuasion? Well, it is an absolutely profound and moving novel. But, no book is perfect. So let's take an honest look at its strengths and weaknesses. The strengths are huge. I mean, the way Austen gets inside Anne Elliot's head is just masterful, and the emotional core of the story feels so incredibly real. On the flip side, some people do find that the middle of the book, especially the scene set in the city of Bath, can drag a little bit. There's a lot of great social commentary there, for sure, but it does kind of slow down the main romance before it all comes together in that powerful ending. So, taking all of that into consideration, we're giving Persuasion a final score of 7.8 out of 10. That's a really solid score, reflecting just how wise and emotionally powerful this book is, even with a few little bumps in the road. And here's how that breaks down. As you can see, it scores really high on content quality and impact potential. That's all because of those incredible psychological insights and themes that are still so relevant. The score gets a little tempered in areas like writing clarity, mostly due to those pacing issues we just talked about, which can make it a bit less of the straightforward read for some people today. Now, if you loved the whole vibe of Persuasion, you are definitely going to want to check these out. First, George Eliot's Middlemarch. It's another masterpiece that really digs into that conflict between what we want for ourselves and what society expects of us. And then there's The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton, which is just a brilliant, heartbreaking story about a love that gets crushed by the rigid rules of high society. And that's all for this explainer. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Jane Austen's Persuasion, please be sure to follow and subscribe for more insights into the books that shape us. Thanks so much for tuning in, and may you always, always trust your own compass.